I was 29 when this happened, and I was driving alone through rural Nebraska on my way to Denver, heading back from a work trip. It was an extremely quiet night, around 2:30 a.m., and the highway felt endless. Nothing but darkness stretching out on both sides. I'd been driving for so long that I was starting to get a headache, so I decided to stop at the first 24-hour gas station I found to buy some water and stretch my legs. These remote roadside stations usually have at least 2 or 3 cars parked, but this one was completely empty. Just flickering white lights and the constant hiss of the air pump in the distance. I parked near the entrance of the store, turned off the engine, and sat for a minute breathing the cold air before getting out. Nothing felt wrong at that moment, just a normal, quiet night in the middle of nowhere. As I started walking toward the glass door of the convenience store, I noticed an old car parked a few spaces down, an 80s brown sedan, the paint completely dull. It looked abandoned. There was no one inside and the windows were too dark to see anything. At first I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was odd someone had parked so far from the entrance. But when I reached the store door and reached out to pull it open, I heard a very clear sound, an engine turning on. I looked back through the reflection in the glass and saw the brown sedan switch on its headlights all at once, like it had suddenly woken up. The car lurched forward a few inches, just enough to make the suspension bounce. There was no one inside. I had checked seconds earlier. I froze for a few seconds, my hand still holding the door handle. The sound of the engine filled the empty parking lot in a way that felt too loud for that time of night. I turned to look directly at the car, trying to see someone in the driver's seat, but the windows seemed even darker than before. No silhouette, no movement. Just those bright headlights pointed straight at me. I tried to convince myself that maybe someone had been lying down on the seat, maybe sleeping. But the way the car had turned on at the exact moment I touched the door made every instinct in my body tense. Even so, I went inside quickly, trying to act like nothing was wrong. Inside, the cashier looked half asleep, leaning on the counter with a magazine open. He didn't even look up when I walked in. I went straight to the fridge to grab a bottle of water, but I couldn't stop thinking about the car outside. I pulled the glass door of the fridge slowly, trying to catch a reflection, and for a moment I thought I'd imagined everything. The sedan was parked, headlights still on, no movement at all. I paid for the water as fast as I could, trying not to look nervous, but my hands were sweating and my breathing felt short and uneven. The cashier just said, "Have a good night," without lifting his head. I hesitated before opening the door again, almost expecting to hear the engine react. When I pushed open the door, the cold air hit my face, and for some reason, it made me even more alert. I immediately looked at the sedan. It was a few inches farther forward than before. Not much, but enough for me to notice. The headlights were still on, illuminating part of the sidewalk and the side of my car. I stopped right there, gripping the bottle tightly, trying to catch even the slightest movement inside the vehicle. Nothing. The cabin looked empty, perfectly still. For a moment, I thought about going back inside and waiting, but that didn't make sense. I just wanted to get in my car and leave that place as fast as possible. I started walking toward my car slowly, keeping as much distance from the sedan as I could. I was about 6 meters away when something made my stomach tighten. The sedan turned off its headlights, all at once, as if someone had pressed a button. The parking lot got darker, illuminated only by the harsh overhead white lights. I stopped immediately. The engine was still running, but the car now looked like a heavy shadow. I started moving again, faster this time. When I reached my door, I had the horrible sensation of being watched, even though I couldn't see anyone. I opened the door and got inside in one motion, locking it the second I sat down. I turned on the ignition with trembling hands and shifted into reverse. Before backing up, I looked in the rearview mirror, and that's when my entire body locked up. The sedan, which seconds earlier looked empty, now had someone in the driver's seat. I hadn't seen anyone get in. I hadn't heard a door. I hadn't heard footsteps. Nothing. But there he was. A man sitting perfectly still, staring directly at my car. His face was partially lit by the station lights, and what scared me the most was his smile. A frozen, unnatural, too wide smile, like it was stuck to his face. He didn't blink. He didn't seem to breathe. He just stared like he was waiting for me to make a move. I shifted gears and backed out fast, almost skidding on the gravel. As I maneuvered toward the exit of the station, the sedan switched its headlights back on, so bright they nearly blinded me through the mirror. The car lurched forward again, the same calculated movement as before. I reached the exit and accelerated the moment I hit the road, trying to put as much distance as possible between me and that place. But before I could even take a breath, I saw the sedan's headlights reflecting in my mirror. It had pulled out right behind me, accelerating hard, nearly glued to my rear bumper. He wasn't just following me. He was on top of me, so close I could barely see the asphalt between our cars. The highway was narrow, with no shoulder, just miles of darkness on both sides. I tried to speed up, but my car wasn't powerful, and that old sedan seemed to have much more engine than it looked. Every time I glanced in the mirror, that frozen smile flashed through my mind again. I knew I couldn't brake, couldn't stop, couldn't make any sudden movements. All I could do was keep driving and hope I'd reach a town, another car, anything to break the sense that I was completely alone with him. After a few minutes, in which felt much longer, I noticed a pattern. Every time I looked directly into the rearview mirror, the sedan's headlights dimmed slightly, as if he was partially switching them off. But the moment I looked back at the road, they brightened again, getting closer. It was like he was adjusting the chase based on what I was doing, always keeping that same threatening distance. The sedan's engine was so loud I could hear it even with my windows up. It felt like the car was breathing behind me, preparing to ram me off the road at any moment. I was sweating, even with cold air blowing from my vents, and my hands were slipping on the steering wheel. The highway felt endless. Every mile looked the same. Just darkness, far apart streetlights that didn't help, and that sedan behind me attached to my bumper. I tried to keep the car steady, but it was hard with my shaking hands and fast breathing. Sometimes I thought he was going to overtake me or swerve into me, but no, he just stayed there steady, like he had all the time in the world. The only thing that changed was the headlights, dimming when I looked, brightening when I looked away. That made everything worse because it felt like he was reacting to my attention, not to traffic. When I finally saw an exit for a smaller highway, I took it. I wasn't sure it was a good idea, but continuing straight felt worse. I turned the wheel hard and entered the smaller road. The sedan hesitated for a second, as if deciding what to do, but then turned as well. Still behind me, same distance, same speed, same behavior. The new road was even darker, lined with trees, making everything feel more closed in. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wanted to isolate me further, pull me as far away as possible from any chance of help. At every curve, I hoped the headlights would disappear, but they were always there, steady, constant, too close. The road started getting curvier, and that gave me a tiny advantage. On one of the sharper curves, I accelerated harder than I should have, almost making the tires lose grip. The car swayed, but I kept control. In the mirror, I saw the sedan lose a little distance for the first time, like it had slipped slightly. My heart pounded with a mix of hope and fear. I knew I couldn't trust it. Maybe he was just adjusting. Still, I tried to use every curve to my advantage, speeding up whenever I could, braking just enough to stay on the road, but fast enough that he couldn't react perfectly. After a few minutes of this, I realized the sedan's headlights were a bit farther back. Not much, but enough for me to breathe. I took the first residential entrance I saw, a narrow street lined with houses and porch lights. I turned sharply, hoping the tight corners would slow him down. My tires screeched around the turn, and when I passed the first house, I checked the mirror. The sedan had turned too, but slower. His headlights looked weaker now, almost like he was dimming them on purpose. And when I passed the third house, something happened that confused me even more. The headlights disappeared, not turned off, just gone. As if the sedan had vanished in a single second. I turned another corner, trying to understand whether he'd stopped or was waiting for me to slow down. The street was silent, with only a few windows lit and the distant sound of a dog barking. My breathing was too fast, and I felt my heart beating in my throat. I slowed down just enough to check the mirror again. Nothing. No headlights, no shadow of a car, no engine noise. It was impossible for him to disappear that quickly. I had only turned 2 corners and the street was short. Even if he'd braked, I should still see at least a faint glow. But there was absolutely nothing. The silence was so deep I could hear my own engine humming inside the car. I kept driving along that street for a few more blocks, turning randomly just to make sure he wasn't hiding somewhere. Every time I passed under a porch light, my stomach tightened, expecting to see the sedan parked somewhere, the driver staring at me with that frozen smile. But it never happened. When I reached the main avenue of the town, brightly lit with a few cars passing, I finally felt like I could stop. I pulled over in front of a 24-hour pharmacy and turned off the engine, but my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit there for a few minutes holding the wheel until the tremor eased. I couldn't think of anything that explained what had happened. The way the car turned on by itself, the driver appearing out of nowhere, the relentless chase, and the sudden disappearance. Story 2. I was 20 when this happened. I was studying at Northern Arizona University and was driving back to campus after visiting my parents in Mesa. I'd left way too late that night because of traffic, and by the time I realized it, it was almost 2 in the morning. The highway was practically empty, just the constant sound of the tires on the asphalt and the lane lines rushing past in my peripheral vision. The stretch between Black Canyon City and Flagstaff had always made me uneasy because it's long, dark, and barely lit. But I was tired and needed to stop for a minute to drink some water and fix my GPS, which had frozen. When I finally saw a small pull-off with a single streetlight casting a weak circle of light, I decided to stop there. There was nothing else around, just road, brush, and that lonely spot of dim light. I pulled over, took a deep breath, and turned off the engine, leaving the cabin light on. While drinking water and looking for my charging cable in the glove compartment, I heard a noise that made me look at the rearview mirror. I thought it was an animal, but it wasn't. A woman was walking out of the darkness, stepping directly into the cone of light cast by the street lamp. She looked to be in her mid-30s, hair tied back, normal clothes, nothing immediately alarming. Even so, something about her put me on alert. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't seen or heard any car, any door, anything that would explain where she had come from. She raised her hand in a hurried gesture and said, "Hey, sorry. Can you help me for a minute?" She stopped about 2 meters from my window, close enough for me to see that she was out of breath, like she'd been walking too fast or was nervous about something. I didn't want to seem rude, so I lowered the window just a few centimeters, enough to hear her better. She gave me a strange smile. Not a friendly smile, but a tense one, like she was trying to look calm. Then she said, "It's quick, I promise. I need someone to take a look at the trunk of my car. I think something's loose in there. Can you check it for me?" That completely caught me off guard because I hadn't seen any car nearby. I turned my head slightly, trying to see beyond the glow of the street lamp, but there was no vehicle, no shine of headlights. Nothing. When I didn't answer right away, she took a small step to the side, almost as if she wanted me to get out of the car. "Really, it's just a minute," she repeated. Her voice was low but firm, like she knew exactly what she was doing. My whole body went rigid. It made no sense for her to be out there alone in the middle of nowhere asking for that kind of help, especially without a car in sight. I told her I couldn't, that I was late, that I needed to keep driving. That's when she stopped smiling. Her face changed completely, not in an aggressive way, but like someone who realized there was no point in insisting. Her expression became neutral, almost empty. And then, without taking her eyes off me, she made a small hand gesture. A tiny, almost unnoticeable movement toward the brush just off the road. When she did that, I instinctively turned my head, expecting to see nothing but bushes. But I saw movement. First, just shadows among the trees. Then 2 figures slowly stepped out of the darkness, walking toward the circle of light. They weren't rushing, they weren't hiding. It was like they had been waiting for her signal. Both were adults, maybe in their 30s or 40s, wearing dark clothing that made it hard to see any details. They didn't say anything, didn't look around. They just walked in a nearly straight line as if they knew exactly where I was. My body seized instantly. It felt like my brain stopped half a second before the rest of me did. The woman kept watching me as if she were waiting for my reaction. Her face was way too calm for that situation. I felt my heartbeat in my throat, so strong it hurt. The only thought in my head was, I need to get out of here now. I didn't think twice. I raised the window so fast the rubber lining squeaked, and I shifted gears with a shaking hand. Before she could take another step toward the car, I slammed the accelerator to the floor. The tire squealed on the hot asphalt and the car shot forward, kicking up dust behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw the two men stop at the edge of the road as if deciding whether it was worth running after me. The woman didn't move at all. She just stood there, watching, following my car with her eyes until the streetlight grew distant. The highway was completely empty, and I was driving faster than I should, trying to put as much distance as possible between me and that pull-off. My hands were sweating so much that I had to readjust my grip on the wheel constantly. Every second I expected headlights to appear behind me, because if they had come out of the woods like that, it wasn't impossible they had a car hidden somewhere too. But the mirror showed only darkness. The yellow line flashed by, lit by my headlights, and I tried to steady my breathing with no success. I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, that any normal person would have left immediately, but part of my mind was still trying to understand what exactly I had just seen. I'd been driving like that for 4 or 5 minutes, completely tense, when something made me almost lose control of the car. Something was stuck in the passenger door. I only noticed because the dashboard light reflected off a filthy piece of fabric sticking out, flapping in the wind like it was caught on the inner handle. For a second I thought it was trash I had left there myself, but the fabric was gray, worn, marked. It looked like it had been torn from clothing or a bag. I didn't remember anything like that inside my car. My whole body went cold. The only explanation was that someone had put it there while I was stopped. Maybe when I lowered the window. Maybe when I looked toward the woods. Maybe while I was distracted grabbing my water. The thought made me so nauseous I had to slow down just to keep control of the wheel. I didn't want to stop the car again, not for anything, but I couldn't keep driving with that fabric flapping outside, tapping against the door with every gust of wind. Just thinking that one of those people had placed it there made my skin crawl, like something had stuck to me. I pulled over only for a few seconds, keeping the engine running and the doors locked. I leaned across the seat and yanked the fabric out carefully. It was rough, stiff, as if it had dried mud and dark stains embedded in it. The smell was strange, metallic. I threw it onto the asphalt immediately, closed the window, and accelerated again, feeling my heartbeat hammering in my chest. As I got back to highway speed, I kept scanning both sides of the road obsessively, trying to catch any hint of approaching headlights. But the highway remained completely empty. That filthy scrap of cloth wouldn't leave my mind. I couldn't stop thinking that maybe it was some kind of marker, something they planned to use later. The feeling that I had been singled out as a target wouldn't leave my chest. Every time my headlights cut through the darkness, it felt like something could suddenly appear at the roadside. I passed 2 long stretches of tall grass and nearly stopped breathing, expecting to see figures there. But the landscape stayed empty, still, silent. I kept driving like every mile was a danger zone. The highway stretched out straight for a long time, and the darkness felt heavier than usual, like the pull-off where everything happened was still following me somehow. Every reflective sign made my body tense up, expecting it to be headlights behind me. After about 15 minutes, I finally saw the entrance to a small town with some gas station lights, a closed restaurant, and a 24-hour pharmacy. Just seeing steady lights made some of the tension ease. I pulled into the well-lit gas station parking lot and just sat there, hands on the wheel, breathing deeply until I could think clearly again. I wanted to call someone, but it was already past 3 in the morning and I didn't even know how to explain it. 3 people came out of the woods and tried to lure me to a car that wasn't there. I wouldn't believe myself if someone else said that. I unlocked my phone anyway and stared at the screen, unsure. After a few minutes, I realized the avenue lights were steady and no car was coming from the highway. I decided to go inside the convenience store to buy some coffee and wait a bit before continuing the trip. When I got out of the car, I looked automatically at the passenger door to make sure nothing else was stuck there. And a shiver ran through me, just remembering the feel of that cloth in my hand. Nothing else was there. No marks, no dust. Nothing but the motionless darkness of the highway behind me, as if nothing had happened at all that night. Story 3. I was 27 when this happened, and I was driving alone from Sioux Falls to Rapid City for an appointment the next day. I'd left way too late, and around 11 p.m., I realized I needed to stop for gas because the gauge was already well below what I considered safe. That stretch of road in South Dakota is practically empty, just long, dark fields and no towns nearby at all. When I finally saw a lit gas station on the horizon, I decided to stop, even though the place looked a little too isolated for my taste. It looked like one of those old stations, with the pumps spread out and an almost empty parking lot. Only 2 spots occupied near the store. I pulled up at pump 6, the closest one to the light, trying to get everything done quickly. As soon as I stepped out of the car, the heat of the night hit me like a wave. It was strange. It felt way hotter there than on the stretch of highway I had just driven. I walked to the pump screen, grabbed my card, and started fueling. That was when I noticed someone in my peripheral vision. A man was leaning against pump number 7, way too close for it to be a coincidence. He was filthy, like he'd spent days out in the fields. His shirt was thick, more like a winter jacket, completely wrong for the temperature. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't smoking, he wasn't talking. He was just standing there, staring directly at me without blinking. I tried to act like I hadn't noticed, but it was impossible to ignore the way he was watching me. His face was partially covered by the shadow of the pump, but I could see the dirt caked on his cheeks, like dried mud. His hair looked greasy and stuck together, and his hands were shoved in his pockets in a strange way. Not relaxed, but tense, like he was holding something. The only sounds were the gas flowing and my own heartbeat speeding up. I quickly looked around trying to see if anyone else was there, but the store looked empty, and the clerk, and if there even was one, wasn't visible from where I stood. The feeling of being completely alone with that man made me swallow hard. I held the pump tight and tried to finish fueling as fast as I could. Every second it felt like he was closer, even though I knew he hadn't moved. The way he stared at me, completely motionless, made it feel like he was waiting for some reaction. I tried to come up with a rational explanation. Maybe he was waiting for someone, maybe he needed a ride, maybe he was mentally unstable. But none of that explained why he was wearing winter clothing, filthy like that at 11 p.m. At an isolated gas station in the middle of nowhere. When the pump clicked and shut off, my body reacted before my mind did. I put the nozzle back, walked quickly to my car, and felt my hands start shaking. When I opened the car door, I heard a sound behind me. Not footsteps, but something like fabric scraping quickly. I turned just enough to see the man still in the same spot, but now he was leaning forward slightly as if he had decided to get closer. His stare was still locked on me, no blinking, no change of expression. It was like looking at someone who wasn't even trying to seem human. I got into the car immediately, slammed the door shut, and hit the lock button so hard my finger hurt. I started the engine right away, even though I knew I should stay calm so I wouldn't make a mistake. And then it happened. The second I shifted into reverse, the man ran toward me, not stumbling, not speeding up gradually. He sprinted like he was trying to reach the car before I could get out of the parking spot. He lifted his arms like he was about to jump onto the hood. I hit the gas without thinking, throwing the car backward so fast my stomach flipped. The front of my car passed just inches from him as I swung out of the spot. He tried to keep up, running diagonally through the lot, but I was already turning toward the exit. My heart was jammed in my throat as I got back onto the road, accelerating like I was escaping a fire. As soon as I merged back onto the highway, I checked the rearview mirror out of reflex, and I almost lost control of the car when I saw what was happening. The man was running on the shoulder, running alongside the highway. Keeping up with my speed for a few seconds, it made no sense. I was going almost 50 miles per hour, and he was still running in the dark, heavy steps pounding like nothing was stopping him. The glow of my taillights lit his silhouette, and the way he moved, with his body tilted forward and his arms stiff, gave me a horrible feeling that he hadn't stopped even for a second since I left the station. I whipped my eyes back to the road, breathing completely out of control. Slowly, his figure in the mirror began to shrink until it disappeared into the darkness. I wanted to believe he had finally stopped, that he had given up, but my body didn't believe it. My hands were shaking so badly I had to keep adjusting my grip on the wheel. The highway felt longer than before, and every reflective marker on the asphalt made me flinch, thinking he was appearing again. I drove like that for about 10 minutes, nearly hyperventilating until I saw the lights of a more populated area approaching, a small cluster of stores and an old roadside hotel. I pulled into the first brightly lit parking lot I found and turned off the engine without even realizing I had done it. Story 4. I've been a truck driver for over 10 years and I've experienced strange things in the middle of the night, but nothing comes close to what happened that night. It was around 3 in the morning and I was crossing the I-70 in Colorado, heading toward Grand Junction after loading in Denver. That stretch of highway is practically empty at that hour, just mountains, darkness, and silence. I was tired, but not enough to need to stop. I just wanted to cover a few more miles before sunrise. The radio was low and the truck was running smoothly, with no unusual noises. It felt like a normal night on the road, one of those where the highway seems endless but safe. After several minutes without seeing a single car, I noticed a bright glare forming in the mirror. High beams, very high, coming up way too fast. It struck me as odd because it's not common for someone to tailgate a truck at that hour, especially with that kind of intensity. I figured it was just someone impatient trying to pass, so I kept the cruise control on and stayed in my lane. But instead of passing me, the car stayed glued to my bumper just a few meters away, its headlights lighting up my entire cabin through the mirror. It was a dark sedan, looked like something from the early 2000s, and the driver seemed determined to make me notice him, because he wouldn't lower his high beams at all. After about 30 seconds glued behind me, the sedan began flashing its lights, 3 quick bursts, then 2 stronger ones, as if trying to warn me about something urgent. I slowed down slightly, expecting him to finally pass, but nothing happened. He continued tailgating me, flashing his lights insistently. That's when I started to get suspicious. If there truly was something wrong with my truck, the normal thing would be for the person to pass me, signal through the window, or honk, not cling to my rear bumper like that. Still, I thought it might be safer to move to the right lane to give him space. As soon as I did, the sedan sped up and pulled alongside me. The driver rolled down his window and began pointing frantically at my rear tire, like he was desperate for me to understand. I tried to glance quickly at the side mirror, but I didn't see anything wrong. No vibration, no sound, nothing. The truck was running perfectly. The way he pointed was exaggerated, almost theatrical. He leaned his whole body out of the window, waving his arm with so much force it looked uncontrolled. At that point, something in my instinct was already telling me not to pull over. Still, the sedan kept insisting, gesturing faster and faster and swerving dangerously close to my lane. I honked, hoping he'd back off. But that only made him try to get closer, like he was irritated that I wasn't obeying him. I kept the truck steady and sped up just a bit, enough to gain distance, but the sedan didn't give up. He sped up too and pulled alongside me again, this time closer, nearly scraping the side of my cab. The driver continued pointing at the tire, but by then it was obvious this wasn't about safety. It was too much insistence, too theatrical, too aggressive. He started moving his arm as if commanding me to pull over immediately. But that stretch of I-70 was narrow, unlit with guardrails on both sides. Pulling over there would mean being completely vulnerable in the dark. I knew I couldn't do that. When he realized I wasn't stopping, his behavior changed in a way that made my stomach drop. Instead of pointing at the tire, he pulled the car even closer and began nudging the sedan against the side of my truck, as if trying to push me off the lane. It wasn't a sudden hit, but a repeated one. He'd press a little, back off, then press again, inch by inch. The impact wasn't strong enough for instant damage, but strong enough that I had to grip the wheel harder. The truck swayed once, and I felt the trailer react. The sensation was horrible, like he was testing how far he could go before actually forcing me off the road. I tried to keep my speed steady, but my hands were so tense on the wheel they hurt. The sedan stayed beside me, completely unpredictable. Sometimes it would fall back for a second or two, and I'd think maybe it would stop. But then it accelerated again and aligned the body of the car with my cab, getting so close I could hear his tires hitting the reflective lane markers. It was like he was searching for the perfect point to throw me off balance. I knew that if he pushed harder even for a moment, my truck could slam into the guardrail and turn into a disaster. The highway was still completely empty. There was no one around to see anything or help. It was just me, him, and the darkness. I needed to reach a well-lit area, any gas station, exit, rest area, anything. I started scanning the reflective signs along the road, searching for a sign of life. My breathing was too fast, and I tried not to take my eyes off the road even with the sedan still stuck beside me. After what felt like an eternity, I finally saw a sign for a service area less than a mile away. It felt like spotting a lifeline. I gently increased my speed, knowing any sudden movement could be used against me. The sedan tried to keep up, accelerating as well, but it looked more unstable now, swaying slightly from side to side. Even so, he didn't give up. He stayed there, stuck to me, making those tiny movements that only increased my panic. When the exit finally appeared, I signaled even though I knew he wouldn't care. I turned the wheel firmly to take the ramp leading to the lit station. For a moment, I thought he was going to throw his car at mine to block the maneuver. The sedan jumped half a car length forward like he might try to cut me off. But I had more weight, more stability. I pushed the truck into the exit lane and felt the wheels bounce over the rough asphalt. The sedan tried to follow, but he entered crooked, swaying hard and nearly hitting the guardrail on the curve. Even then, he kept coming, insisting until the very last second. As I approached the station, the lights grew brighter and the open space came into view. It was as if the light itself pushed back a bit of the danger I'd felt since he showed up in my mirror. The station was small but fully illuminated, with 2 active pumps and a parked truck on the other side. As soon as I passed the first beam of bright light, I checked the mirror again. The sedan was a few meters behind, but still coming. Then when my truck entered the fully lit area, something happened that made my entire body freeze for a moment. The sedan slammed on the brakes, kicking up dust, and made a sudden U-turn right on the access road, almost violently. He fled. No hesitation, no slowing down, no trying to hide. He simply turned around and vanished back into the dark highway. I parked the truck in the brightest spot I could find and shut off the engine slowly, trying to regain my breath. My hands were trembling so badly, I had to press them against the wheel for a few seconds. It was like my body was late in understanding the danger had passed. The silence of the station felt surreal after the chaos of the sedan hitting against my truck on the highway. I stared out the window for nearly a full minute, half expecting to see his headlights appear at the entrance again. But the road remained completely empty, lit only by the yellow lights of the station. The trucker parked nearby was asleep in his cab, and I felt a strange mix of relief and vulnerability to be alone but safe. I finally stepped out of the truck just to get fresh air and try to process what had happened. The harsh white light of the station made everything feel both more real and more absurd. I wondered for a long time whether I should call the police, but what would I even say? A sedan tried to run me off the road for no reason. I didn't have a plate, didn't have a clear description of the driver besides the completely unhinged behavior. Maybe if I called, they'd just tell me to drive carefully. So I went back to the cab, locked the doors, and sat there for another 10 minutes before working up the courage to return to the road. And even now, years later, every time I see high beams in my mirror in the middle of the night, my body goes on alert automatically, as if that night on the I-70 could start all over again at any second. Story 5. I was 32 when this happened, and my wife and I were driving back from a long trip to visit my parents in Texas. It was past midnight when we decided to stop at a cheap Motel 6 in Oklahoma because we were too exhausted to keep driving. It was one of those simple motels with outside-facing rooms and 2 floors connected by metal staircases. The parking lot was well lit with yellow lamps, and the front desk was tucked away in a small glassed-in corner. Nothing seemed strange besides the normal exhaustion after hours on the road. We just wanted to sleep, take a shower, and continue our trip the next day. We grabbed the key at the counter, parked near the stairs, and started pulling our luggage from the trunk. While I was pulling out the larger suitcase, I noticed a woman standing at the entrance of the parking lot, exactly where the light poles cast a stronger shadow. She was completely still, absolutely fixed in place, staring directly at my wife. Not at me, only at her. She looked to be in her early 40s, long, messy hair, wearing a dark coat despite the heat. She didn't blink, didn't move her hands, didn't give any sign that she was just there by coincidence. It was like she was waiting to be noticed. My wife didn't see her right away, so I watched for a few seconds, trying to understand if she was just someone standing around for no reason. But she didn't look away even once. It was like she was paying way too much attention to her. I grabbed the smaller suitcase and stepped closer to my wife just to make sure she hadn't noticed the woman. When I whispered to her about it, she finally looked toward the entrance of the parking lot. The woman didn't move, didn't change her expression. She just kept staring at her as if she were waiting for a very specific reaction. My wife muttered "That's weird," and walked around the car to grab another bag. That was when the woman slowly turned her face as if she had realized I was watching her too. The motion was slow, almost calculated, and for some reason that made everything even more unsettling. I froze for a few seconds, waiting for her to walk away or at least shift her posture, but nothing happened. She remained there, motionless, as if glued to the ground. We finished grabbing our bags and made our way up the metal staircase. The sound of our steps echoed louder than it should have, and every time I stepped, I felt even more watched. When we reached the second floor and walked to our room, I couldn't resist. I glanced back toward the parking lot. The woman was still there in the exact same spot, now staring toward the staircase as if she had followed our route with her eyes. My wife slid the keycard and went in quickly. I kept staring until the door was about to close, waiting for some kind of movement from the woman, but nothing happened. Just that fixed, expressionless stare as if she were memorizing every detail about us. When I walked in, I locked the door with more force than usual, trying to ignore the awful feeling it had given me. We tried to go through the usual routine, washing up, sorting things, deciding who would shower first, but I couldn't get the image of that woman out of my head. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of the air conditioner, which somehow made everything I remembered even clearer. My wife asked if I was overreacting, if maybe the woman was just waiting for a ride or thinking about checking in. I wanted to believe that, but something about the way she stood there, totally motionless, not blinking, didn't feel normal. I walked to the window, pulled the curtain open just a little, and peeked out. The entrance of the parking lot was empty. The woman was gone. Part of me felt relieved, but the other part felt even more uneasy, because she had vanished too quickly. I decided to close the curtain completely and try to relax. My wife went into the bathroom and I sat on the bed scrolling through my phone without actually reading anything. The room had those typical motel doors, thick but with a gap underneath that let a bit of corridor light seep in. It was precisely through that gap that I noticed something a few minutes later. A shadow moving slowly, far too slowly, like someone walking unnaturally slow right outside. At first I thought it was just another guest heading to a nearby room, but the shadow stopped right in front of our door. A wave of cold hit my stomach so fast my whole body went rigid. The air conditioner sounded louder all of a sudden, as if trying to drown out the silence in the hallway. I sat there staring at the bottom of the door, trying to figure out if I really saw what I thought I saw, or if it was just paranoia because of the woman in the parking lot. But the shadow didn't move. It stayed there as if the person were standing directly in front of our door, motionless, just like she had been downstairs. I moved closer, quietly, and knelt down to try to see something through the gap. I couldn't see a face or details, but I could make out the outline of a shoe, still pointed directly toward the inside of the room. My heart started pounding so hard I felt it in the thin motel carpet. I didn't know whether to knock on the door, call my wife, or stay silent. I froze there for a few seconds that felt far too long. When I finally gathered the courage to step back, the doorknob moved. First a tiny movement, almost imperceptible. Then another, firmer, like someone testing whether the door was truly locked. I stood there paralyzed, watching the metal turn millimeter by millimeter to one side, then the other, in complete silence. No knocking, no voice, no attempt to sound friendly. Just that slow, patient movement, like someone who already knew we were inside. My wife opened the bathroom door right then, asking if I heard something. I could only raise my hand and point to the door. The doorknob stopped instantly, as if whoever was outside had heard her. "Is someone out there?" my wife asked, but the hallway stayed completely silent. I waited a few seconds, took a deep breath, and finally approached the door. I looked through the peephole, one of those old distorted glass ones, and my whole body went cold instantly. The woman was there, standing directly in front of the door, so close that her face looked warped by the lens. She was staring right at the peephole as if she knew exactly where I would be looking from. Her face had no expression at all. No blinking, no head tilt, no shift in posture. It looked like she was waiting for the exact moment to be fully noticed. For a second, she stepped back slightly as if preparing to run. And then she slowly turned her body just like she had done downstairs, when she began moving down the hallway, walking far too quickly for someone who had been standing still seconds ago. I unlocked the door on impulse. I opened it just enough to see the entire hallway. She was already near the end, heading toward the stairs. My wife told me to close the door, saying none of this made sense, but I walked to the railing on the second floor to look. I saw her descending the stairs quickly without looking around, her arms stiff at her sides. But when she reached the ground floor, things got even stranger. She didn't cross the parking lot. She didn't get into a car. She didn't walk toward the street. She just disappeared around the side of the building as if she had come from there the whole time. I stayed there staring, trying to process what had just happened until I felt my wife pulling my arm to go back inside. I locked the door, slid the deadbolt, and pushed our suitcase in front of the door. Not that I really believed it would make a difference if she wanted to come in. The rest of the night was awful. Every sound in the hallway made us flinch. Every car in the parking lot made my heart race. The feeling that she could come back up the stairs at any moment wouldn't leave my mind. My wife tried to sleep, but I stayed in the chair by the window, watching through the slit in the curtains, waiting to see that figure standing there again. She never appeared. The parking lot stayed empty, motionless, like nothing had happened. When the sun finally started to rise, we packed in silence and left before checkout time. I handed the card key at the front desk without mentioning anything. The woman at the counter just said, "Have a good day," and I responded automatically, wanting only to leave. To this day, every time I pass by a Motel 6, I feel that same tightness in my chest. Not because of the building, but because of the way that woman seemed to know exactly where to be, at exactly the right time, as if she had been waiting for us from the moment we parked the car. Story 6. I was 20 years old when this happened, and I was driving down a rural dirt road in the middle of Kansas, cutting through to get to my parents' house. It was around 11:30 at night, and I had known that route since I was a kid. A narrow road full of potholes, cornfields on both sides, and only a handful of houses along the way. I just wanted to get there, because I was tired and the warm night breeze made everything feel strangely still. Nobody drove through there at that hour. Literally no one. So when I saw a pair of faint headlights in the distance coming toward me, it immediately felt wrong. I slowed down and pulled a little toward the loose dirt shoulder like I always did when another car needed to pass. But as the vehicle got closer, I realized the headlights were off. The only reason I had seen it before was the moonlight reflecting off the white exterior. It was an old Jeep, one of those boxy front ones, moving way too slowly for someone simply driving at night. I thought maybe it had mechanical issues, but when it got close enough for me to see inside, my chest tightened. The driver's seat was empty, completely empty. No silhouette, no hands on the wheel, nothing. The Jeep moved in a straight line as if someone unseen were controlling it. And in the back seat, there was a hunched figure, unmoving, like someone hiding and waiting for the right moment to rise. I froze for a few seconds, hand still on the wheel, trying to understand if my eyes were tricking me. The Jeep passed so close it kicked dust into the air, but the interior remained completely dark, except for the shape of that curled figure in the back seat. I couldn't see a face or clothing, nothing but a crouched silhouette like someone intentionally hiding. There was no loud engine noise, no shifting, no sound of someone moving inside. The Jeep just kept rolling straight like it didn't need anyone to drive it. My first instinct was to stop and catch my breath, but I kept going slowly, checking the rearview mirror whenever I could. That's when things got worse. In the mirror, I saw the Jeep slow down right after passing me. It didn't continue down the road, it turned in a way that looked too precise, almost mechanical, and began heading back toward me. Its headlights were still off, so it was just that pale shape coming back along the dirt road, dust rising behind it. I couldn't tell if the figure in the back seat had moved, but the idea of the Jeep now coming after me made my whole body go into high alert. I shifted into first gear and accelerated, even with the potholes and loose ground making everything shake. The road was narrow and uneven, and every bump made my car jolt so much I worried about losing control. But behind me, the Jeep followed in a perfect line, without swaying, as if it wasn't hitting the same holes at all. That made everything feel even more wrong. I kept looking in the mirror every few seconds, and the white silhouette seemed to be gaining on me, slowly, steadily, without rushing. The crouched shape in the back didn't move, but the darkness inside made it feel like it could rise at any moment. My breathing shortened, and that deep, instinctive adrenaline hit me like a warning. When I reached a sharp bend in the dirt road, I turned too fast and sent dust flying everywhere. I hoped the Jeep would struggle with the curve, but when I checked the mirror, it was taking it with the same impossible precision as before. It was as if it were glued to my path, mirroring every movement I made. I tried to accelerate more, but the road just didn't allow it. Every rough patch made the car threaten to fishtail. Even so, the Jeep didn't slow down. There was something about the way it matched my route exactly that made one thing very clear. This wasn't coincidence. It was copying me. I started to feel that if I stayed on that dirt road long enough, it would eventually bump into my car or force me to stop. My only real chance was reaching the paved highway a few kilometers ahead, where there would be more room, lights, and maybe even some traffic. So I focused on moving forward, trying to keep control through the looser stretches of the road. The Jeep stayed behind, always the same exact distance, like it was calculating how close it could get, without making the situation escalate yet. The rising dust hid parts of it, but enough of the white outline showed for me to know I wasn't imagining any of it. Every second felt longer, and the thought of that figure in the back seat standing up at any moment made everything worse. Finally, after a few tense minutes, I saw the reflective signs indicating the highway ahead. The relief hit me, but I didn't even have time to breathe, because as soon as I noticed the sign, I realized the Jeep had accelerated. Not by much, not suddenly, but enough to shrink the gap it had been keeping. It was like it knew I was about to escape that isolated stretch. I gripped the wheel, turned onto the access ramp, and almost felt the tires lose traction as I transitioned from dirt to asphalt. Once I hit the highway, I accelerated as much as the car could handle. But when I looked in the mirror, the Jeep made the turn behind me with the same impossible smoothness. And it kept coming. Even with the asphalt finally giving me traction, my body stayed in full panic mode. The highway was completely empty. No cars in sight, no headlights anywhere. Just me and that Jeep that shouldn't have been moving like that. My speed climbed quickly, but the Jeep kept up, maintaining the exact same distance as before, like it was tethered to me by some calculated force I couldn't understand. Now that the road was flat and straight, I could see into it better when the light reflected off the metal. The driver's seat was still empty. The wheel adjusted itself as if guided by invisible hands, and the hunched figure in the back seat remained perfectly still, as though waiting for the right moment to do something. I tried not to blink, trying to keep control of the car while also watching the Jeep in my mirror. Nighttime on a rural highway is already unnervingly silent, but now it felt like the whole world had paused. Just my engine and the wind slipping through the window seal. I knew I needed to find somewhere lit, a gas station, a rest stop, a parking lot, anything that could break the feeling of being followed by something that made no sense. That was when, a few minutes later, I saw the glow of a 24-hour gas station in the distance. Small but brightly lit with signs reflecting far away. The moment it came into view, panic and urgency surged through me. I needed to get there. I headed toward the station as fast as I could, trying to keep the car stable while my hands shook on the wheel. The parking lot was large and completely lit by tall lamps, and just seeing that much light made my body react as if I finally had some protection. I swerved into the station, nearly skidding, and stopped close to the convenience store where a small truck was fueling. As soon as I yanked the handbrake, I turned to look at the mirror, and the Jeep was there, turning off the road. But the second my tires fully entered the brightly lit area, everything changed. The Jeep slowed, violently, almost locking its front axle. It stopped at the edge of the access ramp, completely motionless, as if it had hit an invisible wall. I stared, unblinking. It was like the light had stopped it. It didn't advance even an inch into the parking lot. It just stayed there in the dark, the faint reflection on its white exterior barely catching the edge of the light. The crouched figure in the back seat was still there, unmoving, hidden in the shadow. The steering wheel kept adjusting itself subtly, like unseen hands were gripping it. I watched for a few more seconds, unable to understand any of it. And then, without warning, the Jeep jolted, swung around sharply like it was yanked by a hook, and sped back down the highway. Within 3 seconds, it was gone. No lights, no headlights, nothing. I kept staring at the highway for several seconds, trying to figure out if it had really happened or if my fear had distorted everything. The Jeep disappeared so fast it felt impossible. I expected to hear an engine, see dust, some sign of direction, but there was nothing. It was like it had simply been erased from the road. I got out of the car still shaking, needing fresh air, and walked to the convenience store door. The clerk gave me a strange look. I must have been pale, and asked if everything was okay. I almost said no, but hesitated. What would I even say? A Jeep with no driver followed me for miles down a dirt road? I wouldn't believe it if someone told me that. I bought a water bottle just to have something in my hands. I stood by the window, watching the stretch of highway illuminated in the distance. Every set of headlights, and there were only a few, made my heart jump. But none of them were the white Jeep. The station felt like a safe zone, like all that bright light was enough to keep whatever that was from getting closer. I waited more than 15 minutes before deciding to return to my car, and when I did, I checked the back seat 3 times before getting in. I only managed to keep driving once I convinced myself there was nothing, and no one, there. The rest of the trip to my parents' house was tense, but there was no sign of the Jeep again. Story 7. I was 22 years old when this happened, and I was driving alone up the I-25, heading home after visiting a friend in Pueblo, Colorado. It was already past midnight, and the highway was practically empty. One of those long, dark stretches that always look the same, with reflective signs appearing only every now and then. I was tired, listening to low music just to stay awake, trying to keep a steady speed. That's when I noticed an old car behind me. It wasn't tailgating, but it had been keeping the exact same distance for several minutes, like it was watching me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. The I-25 really is deserted at night. But after a while, something about the way it matched my pace exactly made my stomach tighten. I kept driving, trying to ignore it, but I couldn't. I looked in the mirror again and saw that it was closer now. Its headlights were dim, yellowish, the kind you see on cars from the 80s. I slowed down just a little to see if it would pass, but it slowed down too. I sped up and it sped up with me. It was copying every slight change I made. My heart started pounding, and I felt my hands get sweaty on the wheel. I muttered to myself that it was probably just someone distracted, but the precise way he followed me didn't feel like distraction at all. I just wanted him to pass already and disappear. After a few minutes of that tense cat and mouse, the car finally changed lanes. My heart jumped, thinking he would leave. But no, he pulled up right next to me, matching my speed exactly. I turned my head just enough to see the driver, a man in his 40s, unkempt beard, dark cap, and a completely blank expression. He wasn't looking at me, not directly. His eyes were fixed on a point behind me, like he was trying to see inside my car. He slowly lowered his window, without haste. My chest went cold. He lifted his arm and, with his finger extended, began pointing at my back seat. Not once, over and over, as if he were trying to tell me something urgent. I didn't know how to react. I swallowed hard and glanced at the rearview mirror. There was nothing there, just my backpack on the floor and the jacket I had tossed aside at the start of the trip. I looked back at him. The man was still pointing, now with his arm extended farther, making a slow, insistent motion. He looked frustrated that I wasn't understanding. Or maybe annoyed, hard to tell. His face stayed expressionless, but his gestures were intense. I tried shaking my head no, but that didn't change anything. He kept pointing, faster now, like he was losing patience. My breathing started to falter, and that kind of fear that locks your body in place took over. Then he did something that made me even more nervous. He let go of the steering wheel for a few seconds just so he could use both hands to point at my back seat, leaning halfway out his window. It was like he was desperate for me to look. I turned quickly to the rearview mirror again, this time paying close attention, trying to catch any movement, anything that made sense. But the seat was exactly the same. Nothing there. No shadow, no object, nothing. When I looked back to the left, he was finally looking at me. A direct, intense stare. And then, without warning, he made a sudden gesture with both hands as if saying, "Look now." My body went into automatic panic. I didn't want to slow down or change lanes or do anything that would let him get closer. I kept the car steady and accelerated, hoping he would back off. But he sped up too. He got close enough that I felt like one move from him could push me off the highway. Then he did something completely unexpected. He abruptly slowed down. He disappeared from my side, dropping back as if giving up. I spent a few seconds frozen, waiting for him to speed up again and pull beside me, but he didn't. When I checked the mirror, his car was still there, keeping the same distance as before, not approaching, not falling back, just following. I kept driving with my heart racing, trying to figure out what he wanted me to see. The fact that he had backed off made me more uncomfortable, not less. It felt like he was giving me space on purpose, waiting for me to react. The road stretched straight for long distances, and the silence inside the car felt louder than before. Every few seconds, I glanced at the rearview mirror, expecting to see something in the back seat, a shadow, a movement, something I had missed. Nothing, just emptiness. But the feeling of being observed was so strong I had to take deep breaths to keep control. After a few more minutes, I finally saw a 24-hour gas station on the side of the road, bright enough to make me feel safe. I took the exit without thinking. I turned on my blinker and slowed down, watching the side mirror to see if the man would react. He didn't speed up. He didn't pull alongside me. He just kept driving, maintaining the same speed as if nothing had changed. I entered the station road with trembling hands and parked near the pumps, taking a deep breath before turning off the engine. When I looked back again, his car drove right past the entrance, not slowing down, not turning its lights, not hesitating at all. He just kept going along the I-25, as if he hadn't spent the last 20 minutes pointing inside my car. I waited a few seconds before opening my door. My legs were shaky, but I needed to know. I walked to the back door of my car, breathing deeply as if preparing to find something awful inside. The station lights were bright enough that I knew anything, any person, any object, would be visible instantly. I opened the door slowly, afraid to look too fast. The interior was exactly how I remembered. My backpack on the floor, my jacket on the seat, and nothing else. No shadow on the carpet, no sign of someone hiding. It looked so normal that for a second I thought I had imagined everything. But when I went to close the door, something caught my eye. There was a crumpled piece of paper tucked in the corner of the seat near the buckle. I didn't remember leaving any paper there. I picked it up carefully, smoothed it out a little, and saw what was written on it. Just a single number huge in the center of the page. 3, nothing else. No context, no message, no markings. Just the number. My whole body went cold. I stared at it like it was proof that something was truly wrong. Like the man had been trying to warn me about this the entire time. Or worse, like he thought I already knew what 3 meant. I looked around the gas station, expecting to see his car somewhere, but there was nothing. He was gone completely. I got back into my car, still holding the paper, trying to figure out if it had been there before. The more I tried to remember, the more confused I became. I hadn't touched the back seat during the entire trip. I hadn't stopped anywhere dark where someone could have placed it. Nothing made sense. I stared at the number 3 for so long that I lost track of how much time had passed. I wondered if it was some kind of marking for theft, kidnapping, or just a sick joke. But nothing lined up with the man's desperate insistence on getting me to look. He had seemed genuinely worried, but he never tried to hit me or block my car. He only wanted me to look. After a few minutes, I crumpled the paper again and put it inside my bag. I went into the convenience store to buy some water and breathe. The clerk greeted me normally, but I must have looked pale because he asked if I was okay. I told him yes, that I just needed to rest a bit before getting back on the road. The truth was I didn't want to drive another mile that night. I sat at one of the plastic tables near the window and watched the highway, waiting to see that old car pass again. But nothing. No yellow headlights, no old engine, nothing. It was like he had simply stopped existing. As time passed, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It was like the number 3 was glued to the back of my mind, demanding explanation. I tried finding logic in all of it, but all I could picture was the man at his window pointing frantically toward my back seat as if he'd seen something I couldn't. I kept imagining every possibility. A person, an object, a sign, and none of them matched the empty interior of my car. The silence of the station made everything worse. I left the store after about 20 minutes and checked my backseat again just to be sure. I opened the door slowly, examined everything again, ran my hand over the carpet, the seat, the cushions, as if some new evidence might appear. Nothing. It was like the paper was the only thing out of place that entire night. I tossed my jacket onto the front seat and stood there for a moment staring at the empty space. The feeling was awful, like something had happened back there without me ever seeing it. Like I had arrived too late to understand the warning. When I finally got the courage to get back on the road, it was almost 2 a.m. I drove slowly at first, high beams on, checking the rearview mirror every 2 minutes. The thought of how quickly that man disappeared, as if he had some urgent reason to leave, stayed with me the whole way home. I never saw him again. I never saw another old car with yellow headlights. But even now, every time I get into my car at night, I run my hand across the back seat, just to be sure there's nothing there but an empty, silent space.
I'm really grateful for staying until the last minute. It's always good to know that you're here, listening to every detail. If you liked it, comment which part was the scariest for you. And of course, sign up to keep listening to stories as dark as this one. See you in the next video.